Thanks so much. So the market ending the day 19 points down. What led to that?
Well, I would have to say there was a lot of activity. If you notice, there was a lot of shares that were sold for Equity Bank, had highs of 16, between 18 and 16. So there's been a lot of activity on that part. And going by the time of the year that we are in January, there are also those, you cannot rule out a bit of profit takers, seeing as the markets will resume again trading on Monday. So there are few who more or less would have taken advantage of that slight, because if you look at the beginning of the week, the market has gradually gone up from around Tuesday, Wednesday, only to take a dip on Friday, but not too big or too significant a dip.
Let's talk about the reversals we've seen. I mean, from a profit warning to trading positively, 3.3% gain on the share price. That's British American. Also, TransCentury seems to have recovered in the early part of 2012 and continues to be in the positive, gaining 2.9%. Now, when these companies came to the market, there were questions about timing. TransCentury, people were questioning even the pricing of the stock. Now that we're heading into a review of how they've performed in the last year, what do you think is going to work in their favor and what's going to count against them?
Well, we have to take the market or look at the market currently from a point of view of shedding off 2011, getting into 2012, which is ideally was supposed to be, may or may not be an election year. Then there's been the element of trying to bring down the Kenya shilling against the US dollar, trying to bring down that element, but inflation on the other hand has actually been spiraling upwards. There have been measures to curb it down. But how I'd look at it from that and going by what you've listed, would just need to look at it that as the steps that have been taken within the economy as a whole, there are some positives and as well as some negatives. But going forward, at least we are seeing some good results in that the market is slowly by slowly trying to get out of its bearish run to get into a bullish run. It may not happen overnight, not tomorrow, not in about 2-3 weeks time, but gradually we'll eventually get there as you end up by moving out the first quarter.
What's the story behind the gains in BOC today? It's gained as much as 9%.
Sorry, I just lost you in a minute.
I'm saying, tell us about BOC, Kenya, which has gained as much as 9%.
Well, KPLC Kenya, you're asking about
BOC, I'm talking about,
KPLC Kenya?
No, I'm talking about BOC, the industrial manufacturer.
Okay, I hear you. I think there's a slight problem. I couldn't hear you clearly. BOC in terms of its gain, more or less you would look at just generally would be anticipated profits. They've restructured, they've been able to venture out and grow their market base, so hence profitability in essence with regards to the field that is actually operating in.
All right, let's talk about what we're likely to see by way of interest rates, because this debate is raging now. Parliament wants a cap on interest rates because obviously borrowing costs have been over 20%, and already the banks had obliged business by capping it at somewhere around 20%. But Parliament is not satisfied. Would authorities listen? Would they agree with Parliament? And what does that mean for the banking system?
Well, what would happen is we'd have to look at it, Parliament vis-a-vis the banking industry. These are two big lobby groups. Parliament more or less is looking at setting a cap. More or less, you'd look at it from two fronts. Yes, in terms of a political point of view, because they like to appease going into an election year, you like to pass laws that are favorable to the electorate. And two, you look at the banking industry. This has been one of the most profitable sectors of the economy, second to or third to when you look at tourism and agriculture. So it would be what would say is a tough-fought battle to try and rein in what they call the interest rates. But when you also look at it from the point of view of how you operate in an economy, is that our economy is not closed anymore. You're more or less affected by what happens beyond the borders. And if you have a regime that more or less tends to be strict, or it looks to the point of view that is not able to adjust with the times, it may work against that same law that you're bringing in place to cap. But on the positive side, it prevents the whole element of wild spikes with regards to interest rates, which end up affecting the general economy as a whole, because high interest rates affect businesses. It means the borrowing capacity is diminished. If you look at what is happening in the housing sector, some developers have actually cooled down in in the form of putting up new projects, because the rates that they are getting from the banks are actually very high. And so when you look at it from that point of view, it's sort of I would not put it exactly a catch-22, but there must be a middle ground where both parties end up now arriving at a conclusion on how best to go forward.
In these conditions, are banking stocks then attractive?
If banking stocks will always remain attractive because they still are the blue chip stocks within the Nairobi stock. When you look at it from the point of view of year in, year out, in terms of return on investment, yes, they'll always be attractive because there's that element of good gains. If you look at, by the way, there was some bit of trade with regards to Equity Bank. If you look at Barclays Bank, look at Cooperative Bank going back, then you'd always notice there's always a trend that you're safer with. Actually, the best term to use is they're regarded as safer stocks to invest in.
We've run out of time, but in 30 seconds, there's a new tax chief that's been appointed for Kenya. I know there's been a lot of debate about his candidature, and a lot of lobby groups had come into the process. Is it a good move, a new tax chief, and in the form of John Njeri? Is he a good candidate?
Well, if you look at his track record, yes, I would say he's a good candidate. I mean, he was very, very pivotal in pushing for taxes being paid by members of parliament, and actually took the gauntlet and actually led that forward. But also when you look at his track record with regards to the KRA is a very, very influential governmental body, or quasi-governmental body, if I'm to say that. And what it requires at the helm is someone who's able to not be too publicized about it, but also understands the system in and out and is able to operate. Because if you notice, he was in charge of the large taxpayers department at KRA, and that was one of also the top performing departments. So I would say he's a good person to be at the helm of KRA right now.